Dieter. Hi, everybody. This is good old Capt Ron and First Officer and Technological Officer Dieter Staudinger with you tonight. And for our weekly show called Fearless Flight Live. And I'm glad you can join us, both of us. We really put our heart and soul into this. Discounting for the mistakes we make, but I like to think that makes it a little bit more personal. So anyway, we're glad you could join us, and this is a first time welcome aboard. We're really glad to have you. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the standard things, and then I put a little presentation together tonight called "When the Skies Shake." We're going to talk about a SkyWest flight last week that had an incident that made the news. Not really any different than some of the other flights that have turbulence, but thought we'd do a deep dive on this and see if we can't give you a little bit of a framework on how to get through things like that.
Which is great, because we had a couple of people last week actually who wanted to know a little bit more about it, and I promise we were not involved in that SkyWest incident. So,
yep.
But it did fit. I do also want to, if you are just joining us or if you're watching that, after the fact, we have also announcements for 2 Cleared for Takeoff 101 classes in the Los Angeles area a little bit later in the show. So stay tuned. We got 101 classes in LA, as well as a 301 flight class, both from Phoenix and Los Angeles in October, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Cedar. So here we go. And again, this is every week at 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. We bring this show to you for people who are afraid to fly. Maybe somebody's afraid to fly, or maybe you just like to check up on things going on in the commercial aviation industry out there. And so we welcome you. We always start by inviting you, if you have not joined, to join our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather Facebook group. It's if you want to work on your fear flying, or you've already taken some big steps and want to stay supported, this is the place to do that. It's a safe, private space filled with people who get it, and they get you. And that's probably one of the most important things that you can do. The sense of community is part of our 3-legged stool, a fearless flight method, and it's perhaps the most important one, to just get validated by other people, to know that you're not alone in this whole thing. So go over to the link there on the screen and click join now if you aren't already a member, and leave us a little note who you are, where you're from, and anything that might be on your mind. Tonight, we're going to talk about pardon me, talk about what happens when the skies shake. We'll talk about this regional jet that got shaken up last week. And most importantly, we're going to talk about the CFT Clear for Takeoff 101 classes over in LA. We're going to have 2 of them, one in September, one in October, and then it's going to be followed up by a actual graduation flight, our Clear for Takeoff 301. So we'll stay tuned. We'll cover that on the end. So again, welcome everybody. Last week, I don't know, must have been Monday or Tuesday last week, because we did have people inquiring on the show last week. SkyWest Flight 5971 made the national news. We can say it's a rather slow news day. If there would have been another big event, it probably would have been somewhere further down the page. But we'll look at what actually happened and maybe clear up some misconceptions about that. And most importantly, put it in a context that you can stay grounded in confidence and not fear. It's really important to stay abreast of these things and not get caught up and let your mind wander like that. This flight was a SkyWest 5971 under United's colors. And it left Aspen, headed for Houston, which is probably about a 2.5-hour flight, something like that. So about 90 minutes into cruise, it said, and this is right out of the news, suddenly lost 4,000 feet. Okay, so if your mind hasn't done it already, imagine just reading that, and maybe you already have, and you think suddenly. So define suddenly for me. Okay, and I'll guarantee you what actually happened to the airplane, it probably was nowhere near to what your mind said suddenly.
I
Okay.
can tell you what suddenly conjures up in me, as in like the floor drops out from
Yeah.
underneath me. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly, dear. And it says they lost 4,000 feet, and it said it descended more than 25,000 feet. Yeah, they landed. They made an alternate landing in Austin, short of their destination, and it sparked concern and triggered a chain of emergency procedures. So, we'll look at this. So it came out of Colorado, and for those of you who think the Rockies are the roughest place to fly, they weren't over the Rockies anymore. They were well down into the plains by this time. And the aircraft was a regional Embraer 175, a really highly reliable workhorse jet used by a lot of the regional carriers. And it was uneventful for the first hour and a half. And then about 90 minutes in, as I said, it experienced a sudden and severe drop in altitude, according to the press. And it descended nearly 4,000 feet in under 60 seconds. Well, just to put this in context, 4,000 feet per minute, which is what this rate was, that's pretty much a normal descent rate once we pull the power back and get a clearance to a lower altitude. So what I think that is more relevant here, it's probably the first drop put everybody's stomach in their throat. And I'm not mincing words. It probably was frightening to just about everybody in there, and certainly startled the pilots as well. And that was just the beginning. And over the next few minutes, they continued their descent, and they made a decision to land in Austin. Now, one of the things that happened is the mask dropped out, and so people hear that. Some of you may have thought, wow, I thought the mask only dropped when they had a rapid depressurization where they lost cabin pressure. I didn't see anything in the articles that I read about that. So what more than likely happened is the mask. There's a little latch in the overhead equipment bin there where we store those things, and those latches become worn with age. And so two times you'll see them. You see them if you get a good jolt of turbulence sometimes. And I wish somebody would give me a picture of the cabin, because probably not all the mass drop, which is a clear sign that it wasn't due to rapid depressurization. It was due to the G loading with one of the ups and downs, and it caused some of those latches to release, and it opened that, and then the mass fell down. If you're unlucky enough to put a really hard landing on the airplane, sometimes I've never dropped the mask. It's a credit to my career, but I have been with pilots who misjudged and really pranged the airplane on the airplane, where we come back and the flight attendants would come up, and the pilot that made the landing would be all red faced, and the flight attendants would give them grief about dropping the mask back there. So that's more than likely why the mask dropped back there. And it remained structurally sound. The crew performed exactly as they were trained, and we'll look at this in more detail here. And what it means is that nobody's safety was ever compromised. So here, just a visual depiction of passengers described being lifted in the air. Okay, how do you get lifted in the air on an airplane? If your seatbelt's fastened, you can't. So once again, not faulting anybody, but we don't know whether the seatbelt sign was on or off. But that's the first thing you want to do, is make sure anytime you are in your seat, if for sure you want your seatbelt fastened, whether the seatbelt sign is on or not. And if you have to get up and move about, and the seatbelt sign is on, know that you do so at your own risk. I know you have kids that got to go to the bathroom sometimes. You have to go to the bathroom sometimes. But I want to tell you that, there's no guarantee when that seatbelt sign is on. It means that the pilots are doing that as a safety precaution. On this particular flight, a couple of people were hospitalized. It doesn't say, but I'm guessing it was probably the flight attendants, more than likely. But no one suffered any life-threatening injuries. And when you read about physical injuries, what does that do to your mind? It blows it up a little bit, and you said, "Oh my gosh, somebody got hurt." There were no serious things. They interview the people that are the most in disarray when they get off. And one passenger was quoted as saying that he felt like a rag doll. Well, that's what happens if you're not fastened in the seat. And it does look chaotic, and it says menus lodged in the ceiling. I don't know what menus they had, maybe the safety thing like that, but that's something I've never read before. But things were scattered, and two people went to the hospital, and nobody had any life-threatening injuries. What did the crew do? They did exactly as they're trained. They declared a general emergency by squawking 7,700, and that on the chart there, or on the slide, you see that 7,700. That's what we have another little device called a transponder. It interacts with the radar signal from the ground, and it puts things, encodes things on the air traffic controller's radar scope. So when I squawk 7,700 as a pilot, it automatically does some special things. It goes bold on the air traffic controller scope, and it starts to flash. So if he's got 3 or 4 or 5 airplanes that he's watching, he immediately his attention is drawn to the one for our airplane, because he sees that thing flash up there. And the reason we do that, it doesn't mean that we're going to die. What it means is, pay attention to me, Mr. Controller, because I've got some extraordinary things going on that take my attention, and I want to watch you, or want you to watch us. We do that. If we were to be hijacked, we squawk 77. We squawk 75 first, and then 77. If for any reason we can't talk on the radios like we normally do, we squawk 7,700. If we were to lose all of our radios, we would squawk 7,700. And what that does is it helps guarantee that the controller, as I said, is going to keep a special eye over us and pay attention. And the reason that the practical outcome of declaring emergency and squawking 7,700 is, like I said, it doesn't mean that we're in dire straits. It means that the controller pays attention to us, and we don't want to be delayed unnecessarily. And in this case, they got a new clearance to divert to Austin, where they made a safe landing, and then the investigation started underway. Okay, turbulence. Just a quick refresher on turbulence. I'm guessing it didn't say specifically. I'm guessing that this wasn't the jet stream. It wasn't clear air turbulence. It was more likely thunderstorms in the area that day. And I think I read something about clouds being around the area. And so what makes thunderstorms, as you can see, these 2 yellow arrows symbolizing hot air rising rapidly. And when it cools, if there's any moisture in it, it condenses and turns into a big puffy white cloud. And what you don't see on this slide is that when the air cools up here, it then doubles around and goes down. And that's what causes all the up and down thing there. So if you hit just the right amount or just the right amount of convection at one point in time, it'll create some of the havoc in there. And there's a note, that they always make, that clear air turbulence seems to be on the rise due to stronger jet streams tied to climate change. Whether that's true or not, it certainly is reported more often, but that could also be influenced by the amount of increase in air traffic between now and when I started flying 50 years ago. But aircraft, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether there's more turbulence per se, other than your personal comfort. What it does mean is that it gets scary up there from time to time, but aircraft are designed to withstand this, and it's just not anything that you need to worry about. Although you're probably going to have your feelings upset when you do that. Again, a little bit about the context. I touched on it earlier. They descended here. It says 4,350 feet, and in 3/4 to a minute. And again, this is symbolic of a vertical airspeed indicator. Actually, this is one off of a light airplane. If you would see this down here, it goes to 60, which is 6,000 feet per minute. And in a rapid descent, if we lost pressurization, we'd probably be descending up around the 6,000 feet per minute rate of descent. You wouldn't notice any difference in the back. You'd notice when we push the nose over a little bit, but in a typical descent coming into your destination airport, you're going to go down 3 to 4,000 feet a minute if you have an unrestricted descent, which we often have, and so it wouldn't be any greater than that. I'm guessing what did the real damage here was when the airplane first dropped, seemed like it dropped out of the sky, and then pushed over. So, I've said before, when you get a big drop, like you get sometimes with clear air turbulence, stuff like that, the airplane initially doesn't move much more than, 6 inches to a foot. But the momentum of the airplane going down continues it. So it does initiate a descent, but the first part is the bumpiest. And you can pretty much imagine that. And the difference here was that the whole thing was unexpected and uncontrolled. I'd say more unanticipated because of the nature of the descent. And it could have been tied to downdrafts. It was not likely microbursts, because microbursts we talk about more when you're underneath a thunderstorm, headed in and closer to the ground in preparation for landing. But as is proven by the outcome, it's still well within what the aircraft is built for and how much it's stressed to withstand. So it's important to know that the airplane did not experience any sort of structural failure. It was intact, fully capable of flying, as the history of this proves. And the crew's quick thinking and the robust design of the airplane made sure that everybody got down safely. And that's really what it's all about. And, I'll say it once and probably repeat it tonight. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be frightful to be in when you experience something like that. And I'm not expecting everybody to go into a to a lotus position and develop a real comfortable meditation on the spot. What I'm saying is two things, is that you want to just try to keep yourself from losing it in the moment, and then watch the stories that come up as you go further down the road. I did want to talk a little bit about what a rapid decompression is. If they had that, again, it doesn't look like that. This is what happened there, but because they didn't have any confirmed structural failure, and like I said, the oxygen mass deployment doesn't mean that they lost pressure. It may mean just that the G-force allowed, if it was an older airplane, it was a 175, so it's been around a few years. And those are just latches and plastic covers over the hatches there, and it might have just dislocated one of or a few of them, and the mass drop. Like I said, that happens not all the time, but when you have turbulence sometimes, and when somebody makes a firm landing. So what should we take away from this? I've emphasized it so far. You want to make sure that you really, really get a good grasp on the fact that planes are built strong and much stronger than they need to be. The airplanes can stand like I think it's up to 16 times what Mother Nature can generate in some scenarios. And we drill for situations like this. We don't drill specifically for an incident like this where somebody got hurt. We do drill for rapid decompression and making initial high performance dives like that. But the crew all came together. Of course they're strapped in up in the front. You would never think of undoing your seatbelt as a pilot. That would be just the craziest thing you would ever do, not to mention being against the rules. But we do, and while these events are incredibly rare, I know you read them in the paper, but when you put them out and compared to the number of flights, like the day that this happened, there were 45,000 flights, 45 to 50,000 flights in the U.S. alone that day, and 85 or so thousand flights around the world. So when you look at that one airplane that had a situation like this, you get to accept the fact that it is hugely or incredibly rare for that to happen. And like I said, when people get hurt, it's because they weren't wearing a seatbelt. You don't bounce around the cabin when your seatbelt is fastened. It's really, really important to do that. Uh, it's easy to let headlines create fear. But when we look closer, we see once again that the system worked. The pilots, the aircraft, the procedures, they all did what they were designed to do. And when you understand that, you build confidence. And when you build confidence, it makes it easier to fly, and there's less anxiety around that. It reminds you also that you are stronger than the fear, and you don't need to feel compelled by that. Um, the the turbulence can feel scary. Again, I won't mince any words. It's like being in when you get a shot of turbulence like they had on that. It seems like they had on that RJ. It's like being shaken inside a baby rattle, and it can be incredibly frightful, if not terrifying, in the moment. So I'm not telling you again that you need to immediately capture your senses, but somewhere you need to grab onto the fact that while it's miserable, it's not going to cause any problems for the airplane. And the other thing that I think contributes to this is two things. One, when you fly, it's infrequent, and it's hard to assimilate and get used to things like this happening. And two, already notwithstanding that you're flying infrequently, most of you, then it's less likely to happen on those flights. But it seems like it happens more often to you sometimes because you don't have that much to compare it to. So it's your interpretation that matters more than the event itself. It's what you tell yourself during and after that makes all the difference. You've heard me say this before. It's not what happens to you in life. It's the story you tell yourself. And if overcoming flight anxiety is anything, it's about changing the story that you tell yourself. And if you were one of the people that attended our this month's or last month's monthly group coaching call, we talked about memory. And I want to reiterate this briefly. I touched on it a couple of weeks ago here. Memory is shaped by emotion, but it's kind of unique. So there's two things about it. Let's say this whole flight had been uneventful, and they had a jolt like this in the middle of it, but then they went on to land normally. Okay, the intensity can cause your remembering self. That's the part that walks away from this and says, "What am I going to remember?" Okay. And so intensity is one of the factors that goes into why you get so spooked or freaked out on airplanes when something like this happens. And the other thing is called the peak end rule, or it's part of the peak end rule. The peak is how intense was it, and the end was, did it happen towards the end? And for these folks, I guarantee you, some of them walked away from that airplane with not a very good feeling about flying. And this is why I petitioned my airline and have written articles appealing to all the airlines, is they need to debrief people when they get done with an incident like this. I think as much as for something like this, I try to sequester people who didn't have to go to the hospital in a room and let them just talk to the pilots and get the sense that the pilots would have is, yes, that wasn't something that we planned for, but no, it wasn't something that caused us to panic at any time during the flight. But if you can't get the pilots to do that, or they don't do that, or even if you have a flight where you have some kind of a bad experience on that, journal it, number one. And number two, when you're getting off the airplane, take the opportunity, if it avails itself, to talk to one of the pilots and say, hey, back there when we had all that turbulence or something else happened, were we in any danger? What was that like for you guys? You want to leave whatever trauma was associated with that at the airplane. You don't want to take it home with you, because if you take it home with you, that's where the anticipatory anxiety grows out of. Okay. So, and the last thing is talk to me, talk to Dieter, talk to people that you can get a straight answer from, and figure out how to reframe that experience to help reduce the future anxiety and that anticipatory anxiety that bothers so many of you out there. So I don't know if there's any questions or not, Dieter. Otherwise, we'll talk about the classes coming up.
Yeah, I don't have any questions that are really focusing on that. There were a couple of questions about the classes. Um, except Joan said turbulence has made me airsick, so that has given me anxiety. I'm working on that with this program. So that's really important because um like Ron said, it's not gonna go away. I know that's all what we're wishing for. You just snap your fingers and then it never is part of our, experience again. But it's far more likely that it is a process of self-empowerment, and you can only empower yourself, one, with information, but two, by literally rewiring yourself so that the experience will not trigger the same kind of pathways in your brain, and then obviously in your body, where you feel the anxiety, the tension, the sweat, the trepidation.
Absolutely.
So that
And
so
rewiring, you hear us talk about that a lot. Can you really rewire your brain? Well, did you ever get a new car and the switch that was in over here in the one car was over here and the radio didn't work like it did the last time? And God knows if you got a car in the last 15 or 20 years, you got all kinds of options electronically to hook up your iPhone and all that. And if you ever master that, I know that can be overwhelming in and of itself, but that's rewiring your brain. That's exactly what you're doing. Some of you have had coaching calls with me. I have you write your name, and then right after that, I'll say, put your writing instrument in the other hand and rewrite your name. And that just goes to show you we're creatures of habit. Thoughts are habit. And bless her heart, Joan, she's been with us for quite a while now, and she's a great example to anybody out there about you don't give up, you stick with it. And the nausea in itself, that's a sub part of what happens when you get anxious and you trigger your amygdala, and it triggers your sympathetic nervous system, and it starts to get your muscles ready to move, and it shuts down your digestive system. So that's why nausea shows up. And when nausea shows up, now you got yet something else that you can worry about in the future. And we have people that come to us that's their primary complaint is the nausea. So
and one of the things about nausea, and that's why we have well, we teach a couple different breathing techniques, but the 4 in, 6 out is one of the best techniques that you can practice when I mean practice, I really mean that when
yep.
you're not at a 7, an 8, or a 9, or a 10, but when you are just sitting,
Yeah.
watching TV, driving in your car, and just gonna get into that habit of counting 4 in and 6 out, and 4
And like
in.
Dieter says, you practice it when you're not under stress so that you can have a better chance of doing it when you are under stress, because it will. And we teach that. It's called heart coherent breathing. It's just one of the many ways you can do it, but it's simple. You can remember it. And if you can't remember 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, remember however long you breathe in, double it when you exhale. And
So the Navy SEALs have the box breathing, right?
yeah,
So, and part of the reason for box breathing isn't necessarily because it is more effective. It is because it's pretty simple to remember.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So that's why. And Robert actually had a great he said in law enforcement they call it critical incident stress management debriefing,
Yep.
and that is
Yep.
so important to let that energy kind of like move through you, but also work both on your mind, and it gives your body also the ability to kind of let go of that. Like often, you kind of literally, if you physically shake yourself off, right, you kind of are getting some of that tension out of your body. It's a very natural reaction. But when you're uptight forever, right, I mean, that's where you need to learn. Here is when this happens, I do that. When this happens, I do that. And on long flights, I don't know if you do that, Ron, but whenever I fly on long flights, like my hand and my hands and my feet, even if I can't get up because there's turbulence,
Yep.
but I
Yep.
I actually do that so that blood flow comes into my extremities again, because if you sit for a long time, right,
Yeah.
that has an effect physiologically, but it also has an effect psychologically as well. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I got done playing pickleball today, or go when I went over to play pickleball, and I noticed I had just a really slight pain in my right thigh, and I noticed if I paid attention to it and tensed it just a little bit more than normal, it went away. And I think especially when you get old, you got to do things differently. But Dieter's right. Sitting in the airplane, you can do, we call it chair yoga, just
mhm,
tightening muscles
yeah.
and flexing, moving your
Progressive
mind.
muscle relaxation,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah. They
Moving
do.
your mind from where it's not doing you any good to someplace better. So, okay, so let's tell everybody about the good news. We got 2 classes coming up in September. We've been talking about those ever since May when we did the last one over there. And the whole goal is to get people ready for the flights coming up. We have classes here in Phoenix every month. And so it's easier to put up a graduation flight, a Clear for Takeoff 301. It's a little bit harder for the group over in the LA area, but we're doing it again. September 20th, we're going to have one. If you can't make that one, come back to the one on October 11th. And then that's going to be followed up on October 25th by a flight again. I did it last time. I'm going to go over to Burbank, fly with a group of Burbank flyers over here to Phoenix, meet up with some Phoenix flyers. We're all going back to Burbank, and then we're going to have a little celebration, and then we're going to come back with the Phoenix folks in the evening. But the 101 class is that 3-hour class. We go from 10 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. In the Air Hollywood studios, we have the opportunity to use their facilities over there. They just moved to a new facility, by the way. This is the facility that they used to have. It'll look similar to this. They have a boarding area all fixed up there. You can see it out here. And we changed the structure of the class a little bit for the live class. What we do is we spend the first half or so out there in the waiting room to I think I found that more realistically desensitize people for what they experience leading up to the flight. And then eventually we move to the mock-up that they have at Air Hollywood, and you get a little bit more realistic feeling of that. And it's just, people just rave about the opportunity to do that. We do that in an airplane over here in Phoenix, but we don't have the opportunity like we do in Air Hollywood. So it's a great opportunity. And our goal is to funnel as many of those 101 students on the 10th or on the 20th of September, and the 20 or the 11th of October into the October 25th Clear for Takeoff 301 class. And our goal was to do that in time, so when you can make a difference and maybe make some Christmas plans that involve flying if you've been putting it off. So these are the things you can expect when you do that. You're gonna have people are amazed at how much energy they generate, emotional energy, with just walking into this mock-up. It's so realistic. And we go through the boarding process. We do talk about the breathing and visualization and how to change tools to change your mindset. And then we do have a mock boarding or a mock experience in the class where we finish the thing up there. And again, the 301 class is the one where we call it a graduation flight. Anybody can go, and I think Dieter worked his buns off today. I think we got
Yeah.
we got a link that you can actually sign up for that.
Yeah, all of those links are live. So I already put it in
In the
chat as
notes.
well.
Okay, cool. And just to kind of sum this whole thing up, the shared experience is really, we talk about educating yourself. One of the legs of the Fearless Flight method, learning how to distract and disrupt your thinking, changing the way you think, either through distraction or by as a result of the education. But the most important one is the third leg, and that's the community aspect of that. And this is probably the biggest thing that happens. people, I know the one that the last one we did from the Phoenix group, I got people contacting me about putting their own little group together and doing it again. And it's just, you'll make lifelong friendships from this. And it's not just for what the people you meet and what goes on during the day. It's from the follow-up that you get by being able to talk to somebody who shared your experience. So, okay, as we wrap up tonight's show, I want to stop this first, and I want to just address the whole thing. Reward you for being here, for putting out the effort to come and watch us, whether you're watching us live or whether you're watching the replay, and because the goal is to reclaim your freedom in the sky. We covered a lot tonight. I try to do that, maybe too much sometimes, but I want to give you, a bigger bang for your buck. And tonight I ended up talking more in detail about this SkyWest 5971 flight, the incident that it experienced, and look at what really happened. And to help you realize that, yes, it was probably really scary for some of the people on that airplane, but it all works out, and it all worked out once again. And what's important is to look at what really happens, and just as importantly, what didn't happen. We talked about turbulence, aircraft engineering, pilot training, and what oxygen masks actually mean when they deploy. And beyond the technical explanations, we touched on something even more powerful, and that is the story you tell yourself. And it's hard to change your story when you don't fly much, or you don't read and understand in cases of incident like this. If you let it all go with just looking at what the media puts out, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a realistic sense about what happens. But confidence is what comes out of clarity. And tonight we hung together to replace what speculation many of you even may have had, with knowledge, and panic with perspective, and fear with a growing sense of mastery over that. And you can master your anxiety. And most importantly, I say, it's not about just about what happens on the flight. It's about what you remember and how you framed it afterward. That's why understanding tools like the peak end rule and reframing your narrative can be game changers. And if you don't know what peak end rule and reframing your narrative is, you need to do some digging, because that's the thing that ultimately will take place. And if you can do it intentionally instead of by default, you're going to accelerate your own ability to get the results you want flying on airplanes. And in all this together, of course, it's every time you choose to face your fear, even by just tuning into the shows, you're rewriting your story, because that story doesn't end with fear. It ends with strength. So until next time, we hope you'll keep learning, keep breathing, and most of all, keep flying. And Dieter and I will see you again next week for another episode.
There are two questions, Ron.
Okay.
I'll answer the first one. Steven is asking, how often should we be flying once we're on a roll to keep momentum? And I'm going to say as often as you can. Yeah. I know that, with Southwest, you can get flights on the cheap.
And the fee right now, $85. That's the lowest
they've
been. Yeah.
I was gonna get to that. Yeah. For those flights that from Burbank to Phoenix and Phoenix to Burbank, if you can get in now, like literally for $85 one way, that's not gonna break the bank, hopefully, and it's gonna keep you current, right? So, and the other question though, Ron, only you can answer that. Oliver wants to know, so are you a 4.5 player?
4
I don't even know what that means. I imagine
that's pickleball.
Pickleball.
That's pickleball stuff. And you know what, Oliver? I'm about to, because I just joined a club on the west side of Phoenix. It's got 1,800 people in it. And one of the things that they said is they're going to rate me. So we'll see. You can bet it. If I'm a 4.5, I'm going to let you know. If it's not, I'll probably keep it to myself. But anyway, yeah. but I have a
Well,
lot of fun.
ask again
Yeah.
next week.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, probably not next week, but in 2 weeks I should be rated then. So thanks, Oliver, for
Well,
asking that. So, and as Dieter suggested, we don't know what works for you, but I would say if you've not flown for a long time and when you fly with us or on your own and you have a better experience, I try to do it in a month or certainly in a quarter
yeah,
within three
once a
months.
quarter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you don't have any other opportunities with work or anything like that, it's a little harder, and it's a budgetary thing as well. But I'd say in the first year, once you get back in the air, I'd say try to do it in the next 3 to 6 months, and maybe twice in the next year. Okay, and because the more you do it, the better you'll be. And
absolutely.
we don't just try to get you over your anxiety to get on the plane. We want you to get over it and have enough mastery so that you can go to your destination and not ruin your trip, your vacation, worrying about the flight home. So that's even more important. And you get that
Exactly.
from repeating it, knowing some tools, some strategies, and some skills, and then practicing it. And then you don't have to worry about repeating it. So anyway, okay.
Okay.
So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dieter. And hope you guys have a great week out there and come back to Fearless Flight Live